in the occupied West Bank yesterday have went totally manic, inciting violence and calling on settlers across the occupied West Bank to expel Palestinians from the land, steal their homes, and take up arms. So this is pretty wild. And right after this letter was distributed across the West Bank, yesterday was one of the most violent nights and one of the most brutal nights across the West Bank ever. Honestly, since the early 2000s, there were villages across the West Bank that were totally raided, all the way from Bethlehem all the way north to Nablus. So this is pretty crazy. And before I talk any further, I just have to say a disclaimer. This is not intended to promote hate or towards any group of people. We're just reporting on facts that happened yesterday. So here's the letter that was distributed across the West Bank. Of course, it's in Hebrew here, so I have the English translation. And it says, "To all of our people and our country, we came to strengthen the hands of the inhabitants of the hills and farms in Judea, Samaria, and the Jordan Valley." Judea and Samaria is their biblical term they believe is for the occupied West Bank. "Thanks to the dedication of the families and youth in building and settling in agriculture and pasture, more and more areas are being returned to the hands of the people in Israel. With iron and bronze in your shoes, to the heroes who dwell in the fortified cities, and look them to the enemies who cannot enter them. Thanks to the pioneers who broke the path with God's help, the fundamental correction of recognizing the integrity of the land, the control of sovereignty, the expulsion of enemies, and settlement everywhere across the Holy Land will come. I will enlarge the place of Israel from the right and from the left in your seed, and will the nations inherit the cities inhabited to them. In this month of redemption and in the days when we see God's providence over his people to his inheritance, we will soon complete redemption." They were redeemed, and then it has some biblical phrases, and these are all the rabbis. So immediately after this happened, this is what ended up happening in the West Bank last night. Again, this is
المستوطنين الآن على المنازل في قرية قريوت.
I mean, there were fires everywhere, and there's actually footage now of these settlers from the occupied West Bank. Let me show you, of the occupied West Bank raiding the Palestinian villages. It was all caught on CCTV. So here are the settlers right here. I mean, there were thousands totally across the entire West Bank. What you're looking at here is just, probably like several dozen, maybe 100 settlers right now. These are all settlers in the middle of the night. This was at 3:37 in the morning. And they were running through, starting fires, burning homes, setting cars on fire, going totally manic. And keep in mind, of course, this comes in support of Israel's right-wing government, Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister of Israel, who's backing all of these settlements. Yesterday, he started promoting the settlements. The settler ended up dying here yesterday. This is how it all started. This far-right extremist settler, a Kahanist settler. Kahanism is the extremist ideology that these settlers believe, which is basically supporting violence against Palestinians. Kahan Chai, the organization that started Kahanism, it's a U.S.-designated Zionist extremist group. So just for context, the settler was killed in a car ramming incident. The Palestinian authorities say it was an incident. The IDF says they're investigating it. The settlers believe it was intentional. Regardless, the settler, while this was going on, was trying to steal a flock of Palestinian sheep. Despite all of this, after he died, Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister of Israel, then posted this on X, stating that he fell while guarding in our land in the settlement of the soil of Samaria. Condolences to the pioneering heroes of the community. And this part right here, again, of course, inciting violence. "And I say to you, in your blood live. We will continue to establish land of the land of Israel and all of its expanses in fulfillment of testament. May God avenge his blood and of all of the holy people who sacrificed their lives to the sanctity of name, the people in the land." And I mean, they're basically saying, this is our land. They continue to say this sort of thing repeatedly. And they're basically saying all of our enemies will be defeated and they won't stop at that, and they're continuing to incite this sort of stuff. He posted this yesterday as well. I believe this was directed at the attacks yesterday in Israel, or Iran's retaliatory attacks in Israel yesterday. So this is all going on, and what's important here is that this is all happening with the aid and the support of the rabbis, specifically the extremist rabbis of Israel, the most extreme radical rabbis that actually support violence against Palestinians, not just violence against Palestinians, but they also call for the sacrifice of Palestinian and non-Jewish babies. They call for the slaughter of babies that are not Jewish, that are not Zionist. This is not coming from my word. You guys might have, maybe you not have heard, because he's very much so covered in the not covered in the West. His name is Rabbi Yitzhak Shapira. He is, let me see, he's this rabbi right over here. Here, let me go ahead and make my screen full screen for you guys so you guys can see. So let me see, how do I do this? He is this rabbi right over here. Let me do a window capture so you guys can see this. Alrighty, there we go. He's this rabbi right over here, and he's a rabbi who wrote a book supporting the violence against Palestinians. And this rabbi is very, very well known in Israel, and he was imprisoned because he's so extreme. He's so extreme that he was imprisoned, and he called for the slaughter of Gentile babies publicly. Let's see, Gentile babies. There we go. Israeli rabbi preaches the slaughter of non-Jews. This is one article written about it. Incitement of violence as Israeli police stepped in and upped their investigation into a book in which he sanctions the killing of non-Jews, including children and babies. And so the rabbis that signed this letter calling for all of these settlers in the occupied West Bank to raid and pillage the villages and kick out what they call their enemies, which is literally just Palestinians who've lived there for generations and generations and generations back. These are the rabbis that are inciting all of this violence in the West Bank. And their end game is to expel the Palestinians, and if that doesn't work, just wipe them all out. That's the end game. And this is happening, of course, with Western approval or just with Western ignorance, just putting their eyes elsewhere. What's happening right now affects the entire planet, ultimately, because the violence that's starting in the West Bank is directly related to all of the violence that's going on in the Middle East, all of the wars that are happening in the Middle East. It's directly related to the fact that Israel never wanted to accept a Palestinian state. They put psycho settlers into the West Bank, and they're using religion to brainwash these settlers to just wipe out Palestinians. That's what's going on right now, and it worked, and it worked for them. They put out a statement calling on settlers to go ahead and just pillage the villages. And what happened at midnight yesterday? Well, that's exactly what they did. They just went ahead and pillaged the villages, all while the media was focused on what's happening right now in Iran. So in Iran and in Israel. So this is the situation. And when you think about it, when you're trying to think, okay, well, what's the future look like? Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Have you guys seen maps of the West Bank recently? Let me show you 2026 map of West Bank, just so you guys can really understand how many settlements there are across the West Bank right now. Let's see, where's the most updated map right here? This one is a West Bank. This one is a West Bank map, and I believe this one was from 2020. Let's see, 2023, 2024, and it's much worse now. But this is a good enough. This is a good enough thing to showcase here. This is the West Bank, and what you see here is the darker the colors, the more Palestinian areas they are, and everything in between. All of this red here are settlements. And of course, you see the vast majority of settlements are right here towards East Jerusalem. That's where the majority of the settlers are. And the way they set up the settlements in order to lock Palestinians in is anything that's basically light. All of the red here are all hilltops and mountaintops. The settlers took over all the mountains, and the Palestinians are in all of the valleys. Why did they do that? Well, because they look down on them. It's easier to control. So yesterday they did pillage. They pillaged everywhere, starting in Bethlehem, here towards the center of the West Bank, all the way up here towards Nablus. Burning cars, burning homes, everything. And of course, this is in support. This is with the state of Israel supporting all of this. So when you look at this and you're thinking, okay, what's the future hold? Well, right now, the goal is to just basically continue separating the West Bank. So they're going to want to cut right through here. They're going to want to cut right through here. And they want to basically make it a Swiss cheese state. They want to have Palestinian Bantustans. And they want to be able to encircle them and control any sort of insurgency that would happen. And they want to make them basically surveillance islands. How is that going to work out long term? Now, of course, Israel wants to also expand and annex all of the settlements. So all of this thread here, they want to totally annex it, which means you basically have Palestinian islands in a sea of Israel. And the West is turning the other way. Right now, they haven't fully annexed the settlements, meaning annexing all of this light yellow, basically. They haven't fully done it. On ground, it's all annexed. Like, on the ground, it's already fully annexed. But on paper, it isn't. And Israel knows to make sure it doesn't do it on paper just yet, because they know that if they do, well, the world is going to turn on Israel very quickly, because then there's actual legal ramifications that the West, at least the EU, is going to have to enact. So they're trying to do everything but what's going to actually cause the West to take action against them. Although this is not going to be able to go on any further. And again, this is happening with the state's condolence, with the state's approval, and then with the rabbis especially, that are promoting and brainwashing the youth to do this. And then, of course, if you talk about this in America, in the United States here, well, you're going to be called anti-Semitic, because you can't talk about what rabbis are up to, even if they're rabbis that are encouraging violence. You can only do that with Muslims. If a Muslim is doing, engaging in violence or anything of that, they immediately love calling that out. If it happens with a rabbi or with a Jewish settler, well, you just have to look the other way, and we have to ignore Jewish extremism. But that's exactly what's going on. So what's going to happen? What's the future look like what's the future look like if Israel gets its way? Well, it basically looks like you have Palestinian and surveillance state islands. The goal is to expel them all out to Jordan. Jordan, of course, made that a red line, because they know if 3 million Palestinians get flooded into Jordan, it destabilizes Jordan. It destabilizes the surrounding countries. Israel recognizes that, so they don't know what to do with them. And it's not good when you don't know what to do with a group of people that you want to get rid of, because ultimately that starts to lead towards the final solution. You get what I'm pointing at? And they're already calling for the final solution. I mean, I have Jewish settlers in my comments all the time stating, we can't wait for the Pali Holocaust. So they're excited about this. And these are supposedly people whose ancestors went through the exact thing that they're now encouraging. I personally, despite all of this, I think what I expect to happen, and you guys can let me know what you think in the comments below, is most likely what's going to happen is Israel is going to get away with this for not too long, until the entire state collapses in on itself. Because keep in mind that the Zionist movement, the Zionist settler movement, is one movement within Israel. But then there's also the secular Jews who are kind of annoyed with the West Bank because they think it's too much and it's not helping Israel as a country. It's too much upkeep. And then there's the Haredi population that they want to pray full time, and they want to be going to their yeshivas, and they don't want to be enlisting in the army. There's a lot of factions in Israel right now that are competing to figure out what to do with the future of Israel. And right now, while this is all happening, Israel is becoming more and more diplomatically isolated. I think the state of Israel is going to implode within itself, because this is too much to simply manage. But at the same time, keep in mind that there are now 700,000 settlers. About 3/4 of them are all concentrated here in the center of the West Bank. So there's less settlers here. I'd say maybe 100,000 outside of everything right here in East Jerusalem, Bethlehem. And what's going on here is these 700,000 settlers or so are all fully armed. They all have weapons. Palestinians don't have any arms. None at all. So you have 700,000 settlers living around 3 million plus Palestinians that are basically their slaves. They're their subservients. They're totally imprisoned. And my family's village also got raided yesterday. My family's village is, in the Northwest Bank right around over here. And my family's village also got raided, and they had the borders closed. My family's village is in a small valley. And they had both of the entrances to the village, because it's in a small valley, they had both of the entrances closed with the metal gates. And the settlers came down from Yitzhar, and they started setting things on fire, setting cars on fire. But ultimately, how is this sustainable? Because you have a population that's smaller than a third of the Palestinians that are all armed. Palestinians can't even protect themselves. It seems like a recipe for a disaster. So even if Israel collapses in on itself, what happens at that point? because then you still have these settler militias that could then fully just go on a rampage and murder as many Palestinians as they like. And this is exactly what Israel wants to happen, because Bezalel Smotrich, Ben Gvir, the finance minister and the security minister of Israel, they're tossing out these weapons to the settlers like candy. Have I showed you guys? I think I've showed you guys the video before of the security minister of Israel, Itamar Ben Gvir, handing these settlers out, the weapons out like candy. Settlers, West Bank. Let me see if I can quickly find it here if I just quickly search it up on X. I've seen it before. And this is a lot of this was coming from yesterday. This was 8 hours ago. This was extremist settlers carried out a revenge attack on Palestinians. So this was in the pillaging yesterday. When was this? This was 11 hours ago. This was also yesterday. This was also yesterday. So this all happened yesterday. And here's Ben Gvir right over here. And, here's the video I was looking for. These are Israeli settlers right over here. And this is Itamar Ben Gvir, the security minister. And what you see here is a table full of weapons, of rifles. Guess where they're coming from? They're coming from the United States. And we pay for them with our tax dollars. And all of these settlers are getting all of these weapons. And they're smiling. And they're literally just handing them out. Here's your candy. Here's your candy. Here's your candy. Here's another settler. This video was posted last year. Or 2 years ago now. It's 2024. So imagine how many more settlers are armed this year, and they don't have any training to get these weapons. A lot of them are super young. Of course, they're under the age of 18. Some of them 14, 15, 16. And they're militias. They're basically Israel's militia groups that carry out its actions in the West Bank. And the state can turn the other way and say, oh, well, we're not the ones doing it. And guess what? On top of that, the Jerusalem Post today decided to put out an article to basically call on American Jews to go on a propaganda campaign. The Jerusalem Post called on American Jews today, telling them we should try to turn the other way from settler violence and focus more on Palestinian violence. This was a Jerusalem Post opinion piece that was posted today. Let's see if I can find it pretty quickly here. And it basically said American Jewish organizations need to recognize the truth of the matter, and they need to start prioritizing now, focusing on settler violence. Here it is. American Jewish groups must abandon outdated two-state advocacy and align with Israeli reality, support settlements, reject a Palestinian state, and discuss Palestinian violence more than settler violence. Of course, in the occupied West Bank, it's all settler violence. And if you look at the reports, even if you look at all of the UN organizations, I believe it's the OCHA website where it's documenting all of the violence. I believe there's about 150 attacks or so against settlers in the occupied West Bank, and there's over about 1,500 to 2,000 attacks on Palestinians. Now, keep in mind, these are foreign invaders on occupied land. It would be analogous to if China came in to the United States and you started having Chinese invaders start colonizing land in San Diego, and nobody could do anything. And then for the people living in San Diego, if they decide to take up arms, they're considered extremists. And then these Chinese invaders start building their own settlements. This is what it's analogous to. And then the world gets mad at you if you try to get rid of these settlers from China. It's the exact same situation. So we'll just have to wait and see. Now, keep in mind, the Trump administration is fully in support of this, by the way. There was one executive order prior to Trump taking office that would sanction extremist settlers in the occupied West Bank. Day one of Trump taking office, he immediately ended this executive order. So now they have full free reign to just go on and do whatever they want to do. Anyways, guys, that's really it for this video. Hope you guys found it interesting, at least informative. If you want to see more of my videos, I'd appreciate it if you just go ahead and click the subscribe button below and give it a thumbs up as well. Otherwise, the best way to support my channel is through super gifts and chats. It allows me to do this as a full-time job for you guys. And also, if you could please join as a member. If you click the join button below next to the subscribe button, you get to see member-only videos I do every single day for you guys. I hope you guys found this interesting, and I'll talk to you again soon. Take care and have a great day.